Alright, so in this video I want to respond. I've been watching some of Sargon's videos and specifically the debates between him and the alt-right, with Richard Spencer and Andrew Anglin. Uh, he always goes back to the same argument that basically you can't create an ethnostate without mass violence. And I know it's easy to jump to that conclusion because you're thinking that, oh, you just have to physically remove all these people. No, all you have to do is create incentives to leave and get rid of the incentives to stay or to come here. Currently, we have floods of mass immigrants because we create incentives for them to come here. We provide welfare and all sorts of gimmies to immigrants. And all we have to do is reverse that process. Okay, so another point is politics is basically war without bloodshed. So people are going to form groups and fight for their interests, and that is force. Government is force, and this idea of fragmented individualism, it exists with the rights you can give to citizens, but on a political level, there are going to be collective groups. No matter what laws are passed, unless you prevented people from talking to each other, people could form these groups. And you can't have a devotion to another state or another group outside of the country you're in, because that creates basic traitorous activity that creates incentive to work against the host country. That's basically the root of JQ, the Jewish question, is that they form a state within a state, and then they don't act in the best interests of the state. So in warfare, people don't follow, at some level they might follow individual rights, but collectively, you're gonna have people working in groups in warfare. So politics is like warfare. You're gonna have people working in groups. And if you have more than one group in a country who are opposed to each other, it's essentially political warfare. But my main point is I wanted to go over a way that the ethnostate can be created with minimal bloodshed and violence. One more point before that, though. Even if you choose not to participate in this warfare that's going on, this cultural warfare, it's like you have Muslims and blacks and Hispanics and different groups, Jews, different groups, each vying for control in a country which was created by whites, and we're just giving power to them, which it will work as long as we're in the clear majority. It works, but as it erodes, it will become more and more apparent that this was not a good idea. So even if you choose not to participate, that does not prevent this from happening. So, Sargon, you say you're against mass migration. But if everyone is the same, then it wouldn't matter, would it? So you're against mass immigration, but why are you against mass immigration? And the reason it is because people are fundamentally not the same, and it's going to change the country. This free market individualism is essentially a European system that you live in, and it's going to fundamentally be changed if you change the demographics. Okay, so you're against mass immigration, Sarah, but it's already happened. So just limiting it or stopping it now won't solve the problem. Changes need to be made to reverse the damage that's already been done. And here's where you make the most glaring mistake in your analysis and all right. Because of you think this process will inevitably lead to violence. But one thing, you already have violence. Look at the statistics on immigrant crime and terrorism. The violence is here, and as mass migration continues, the violence will increase. So either way, we're going to get more violence. But I want to lay out a plan which will minimize this and to reverse it. Okay, so we could reverse the laws of immigration to be that of pre-1965 era. So this would be Europeans of good character only. Next, cut welfare to only those who are severely disabled. Institute infrastructure work programs as an alternative to welfare for the able-bodied. And this will discourage economic migration. So these are steps that could be taken initially. This process could take place over years. Next, change citizenship and voting rights only for Europeans. Now, this is where you could have potentially the most uprising or opposition. So what you would do is you do it staggered over time. Current citizens who do not qualify will retain citizenship but not have voting rights for the rest of their lives. Future children will not be considered citizens. So if someone is not white but they're living in a white country, they will retain their citizenship, but they won't be able to vote to make any changes to the country. But they won't just be deported immediately. What will happen is they'll have time to, because their citizenship will last the rest of their life, they'll have time to make arrangements for leaving the country. And then some of the money that's saved by cutting the welfare programs could go towards a resettlement fund. Also, it could be paid with a tax on wiring money to foreign countries. Then arrangements for immigration could be made with all countries of origin. If a country refuses and does not allow their own people to return, we could threaten removing their trade rights and visiting rights with the United States. I think most countries would take their own people back rather than lose all trade with the United States. Now, how do you determine who exactly is white? If it's not obvious basically when you go in for an ID, your identification, your driver's license, or if you're applying for citizenship, you would basically do a 23andMe test. And anyone who is 51% or more European will be allowed to become a citizen. Now, people are going to disagree over the percentage, but basically the way I look at it is it's not a big deal in the long term if these policies are changed so that change the demographics in the long run. So if someone's 51% or more European, they'll be allowed to become a citizen. Basically, if they're more white than non-white, then they'll be allowed to become a citizen. This will take care of a lot of the issues with having people of mixed heritage or not. You know, maybe even yourself, like if someone's just a tiny bit, you know, or 49% non-white, they could still qualify because the numbers wouldn't affect the overall demographics and survival of whites if we allowed someone with 49% to be a citizen. But it would have to be done by a genetic test so that someone couldn't just say that, you know. Now, subversive groups, which form a state within the state, will also disqualify a person from citizenship. For example, Freemasonry, Judaism, Islam. A person has their highest allegiance has to be to the country. If they have an allegiance to a foreign group or a foreign government or a subversive group that supersedes their allegiance to the country, then they disqualify for citizenship. So to ease the transition, a payment could be offered for those leaving within a time frame. You could have a decreasing tier of bonuses which expire over time. For example, if someone moves within the first year, they get $50,000. If someone moves the second year, they get $40,000. Third year, $30,000. And onwards until maybe like a low of $10,000, and they would be eligible for that for their whole life. This would help speed up the process because people would want to, you know, take advantage of those payments, but it also wouldn't force them. I think this would do a lot to decrease violence because people would be focused on that and they would be given, you know, the pain of having to uproot and go back to another country would be eased somewhat by a generous payment. Also, this isn't really specifically to you, Sargon, but to people who say that like America is a country of immigrants. When America's first immigration policy specifically stated that only Europeans of good character qualified. So that blows that argument out of the water. You know, if the government of America and European countries, they were created by and for white people, just like any other nation is created for its people. Israel was created for Jews, China for Chinese, etc. And this is apparent in not only their immigration policies, but it's just a given by the people that this is for us, and we're not going to just give it away to anybody that wants to move here. Only in European and white countries do we get brainwashed into this delusion that it's just a free-for-all. Our countries are just a free-for-all, and that anyone can come here and vote and make changes to our system and expect to be given control of the country. This is our forefathers would laugh at this. It is a ridiculous idea, and it will end in disaster if it continues. And I don't think the founders of America would envision a time when people would become so brainwashed that they'd accept mass immigration and miscegenation. So Sargon, I liked your videos for a long time. I was into when you were talking about the problems with Islamic immigration, and that was almost like a stepping stone for people to get to the alt-right. But you shouldn't stand in the way of people actually fixing these problems that you're talking about, because how are you planning? See, I don't see a solution. You could potentially change immigration laws, but the thing is, you already have immigration in mass quantities that's already taking place. Like, for example, London is now a majority Muslim. So with the birth rates, they're going to continue to grow, and they're going to continue to want to put their policies in place, which are directly opposed to the types of liberalist policies that you would want. So you're going to be in direct opposition to these people for the foreseeable future. So why seed ground and allow them to grow in power within your country? Why not take steps to reverse this now? Simple question.